Hello, everyone. We're greeting you from the Take a Stand El Sistema Symposium here in Los Angeles. And in the afternoons of each day, we're going to have a conversation that shares some of the experience of being here with our colleagues across the country and around the world who didn't get a chance to be here with us. So these days are packed full of sessions and speeches and activities. And each day we're going to gather and just share our own personal reflections on what struck us, what was interesting to us, and what we think might be interesting for you to know since you didn't get to be here. We're sorry you didn't get to be here. It's pretty lively. I must say myself, going to the first session this morning, which was a whole morning dedicated to how to start El Sistema programs, people were so hungry to have those conversations, it was like throwing red meat to lions. They were just like sinking their teeth into any topic that came up. So let me start with just a quick introduction of our three guests, and on other afternoons we may actually have other people breeze in and grab them in for a quick hi, but today they're having a cocktail party outside, so we've got them closed out. So our three guests here, sitting right to my right, is Margaret Gonzalez. She is the coordinator at Harmony Stockton, and important to know, she is a product of El Sistema Venezuela. She grew up in the El Sistema system, and we're very grateful to have her here in the U.S. now. And Jennifer Kessler from the Orchestra of St. Luke's, where she is the Community and Education Programs Director and is founding the Youth Orchestra of St. Luke's El Sistema program there. And both Jennifer and her neighbor Alicia Lee were Sistema Fellows at New England Conservatory, and Alicia is the founder of the Sister Cities Girls Choir, which is Philadelphia and Camden,
New Jersey,
and a singing-based Sistema program.
It's one of the few singing-based choral programs in the States.
All right, so let me start with whoever wants to jump in first. What was the first thing that hit you when you arrived in this burgeoning conference? What's the first thing that smacked your attention?
Well, for me, it was, I haven't been to the Take a Stand conference in 2 years, but it was just like, it was like a family reunion. There were lots of hugs. People were very excited to see each other. I've been to a couple conferences this year, and I have not seen such dynamic energy on day one. People are, just like you said, people are ready to just kind of eat up what everyone has to offer, and that they arrive with that energy. So just walking around the church, it's been really electric.
Well, Margaret, you hadn't been to one of these before. What was it like for you?
I think the energy that everybody had, and also just, it's my first time here, but I saw so many friends from Venezuela here, and just seeing and having so many years without seeing him, and just that huge feeling, oh, here's my people from Venezuela. It's amazing, really.
Fantastic. Jennifer?
I just wanted to echo what Alicia was saying, that it really is like a family reunion. But in addition to that, I can't believe how many people are here from around the world, that it's so international, and that our programs here, even in the United States, have expanded so much in the 2 years that we presented at this conference, which is astonishing.
Yeah. One of the things I noticed just looking at the program is that for the first time there's an explicit session on the international Sistema. It's sort of seeing the growth of the field in the U.S., that we used to be just focused enough on what we're trying to figure out in the U.S., but now we realize to get the context and to get the learning we now have to be embracing the wider view. Who have you got to go to the morning session, the how to start a program session? Yeah, no. A few minutes. You were there. What was your sense of how people were receiving the information of what we've learned about how you start a program?
People were so hungry about learning the new things, how to open a program, how to do it, how to reach people. I think that was very inspiring, even for myself. For the moment that I want to create my program, I learned so many things about reaching community, about reaching other people, how to get the money, also very important. So I must say it was a lot of learning and inspiration in the morning section.
What's one specific thing you learned? Here you have an idea, you're going to be starting a program someday. What's one thing you learned today that will actually help you with that?
I think when they talk about the quantity of the program, about the kids, how many kids, I think that is very important, and they mentioned it this morning, that it's not about quantity, it's about quality. We can start with 2-3 kids, but if we culture that level of excellence, that's gonna stay for the rest of the program, and then we're gonna have students teaching another students, and that excellent, that level of excellence is gonna stay for the all students that come to learn.
What's interesting is taking that idea of high quality teaching and learning immediately starts to develop the teaching impulse that in fact encourages peer teaching, all of which are great examples from Venezuela's El Sistema.
I just remembered something that I did do in that session when I walked in for a few minutes, which was really powerful actually. And I think one of the great things about a conference like this is being able to talk to other colleagues. They gave us these cards in which we had to sort of problem solve different scenarios that came up as program directors. And I'm reading these cards and I'm thinking, we deal with this every day. You know, whether it's a disruptive student or an issue with hiring a teacher or something like this. And we had to problem solve as a group. And it was really interesting to hear people's ideas around the table, people who are coming from all over the country in different backgrounds. And it was enormously useful.
Did they have similar or very different perspectives on how to do it?
It sort of depended on who was at the table. So some people haven't been running programs yet, and they just were really kind of confused and wanted to talk about other people's experiences. But I think in general, people had pretty similar solutions, which was great.
Mm-hmm. I was at part of that session, and one of the things I noticed, people pulled me aside afterwards and said, man, when the people who ran Yola talked about the miseries they went through in their first year, and then they had to like really rethink everything in their second year, it was like I was forgiven for the private hell I have gone through in my program, that in fact everybody goes through a first year incredibly steep learning experience and then has to recalibrate everything and come back in on the second year. So there was this sense of some of the leaders of our field sharing the difficulties openly, honestly, and this relief of, oh, that happens to you too. There was a lot of that energy. Now, some got in, I think we all got to hear the presentations this afternoon. There were two kind of keynote speeches by Guy Raz from TED Radio Hour and Leon Botstein, who's the president from his early 20s of Bard College and is one of the partners in the Take a Stand initiative. What struck you from either of those speeches? What are you taking away from those?
Well, it's interesting you were just talking about the honesty, because I think, people, for a program as big as Yola, to get up in front of everyone and say, look, we made a lot of mistakes, does give everyone else like a sigh of relief, like, because I made mistakes too in year one, and I had to rethink things. And it's good to know, like, that's why these conferences are so good, so we can all know that we can all learn from each other. And hopefully in 10 years, people will make fewer mistakes than the mistakes we're all making now. But in terms of honesty, the speeches today the keynote speakers were really, really honest. And people were really, I think, excited about all of their viewpoints and a little incensed, which is always, I think, a good way to kick off a conference.
What was one, for the people who weren't here, what was one thing that you think might have incensed people?
Well, I think, I think Deborah started the conference this morning by saying there is an elephant in the room. We all know that there is a crisis happening in Venezuela, and I think a lot of us don't know exactly what is happening because we're not there, and because our media news sources give us a picture that is very difficult to understand. And there has been some talk about Abreu and Dudamel making a stand, and Deborah kind of mentioned it in the beginning, which I thought was great, but then Leon really gave his clear-cut idea that to kind of I guess to paraphrase, he said that to judge them, like they're not. We don't have a place to judge them from, and that at the end of the day, El Sistema, for surviving for almost 40 years through all sorts of regimes, that is super impressive, and that what's most important is that program stay to serve the people that it needs most. And I really liked when he said that if we're thinking of El Sistema as a social program and not just entertainment, that we would never ask the teachers or the doctors to make a political stance that would remove education or remove medicine from a community. And I thought I could hear like the rustling, like, and I thought that was a really great way to kind of kick off that conversation.
Let me ask Margaret, because you're Venezuelan and you're up here and you know much of the struggle that's happening in your country. What is your feeling both about what was said here and how are you doing with all that?
But as a Venezuelan, I must say that it's very, very painful to see my country and everything that is happening there. And unfortunately, the media doesn't show a lot and it doesn't give a lot of information in the USA and other countries. But we have the army going against the civilians. We have a lot of murders every single day. We have a lot of protests. There are many, many, many bad things happening in my country. Of course, being outside Venezuela, watching it and knowing that you cannot do anything, you are useless, worthless. Because you are in another country, but we are trying to, and I think that it's very important that they mention it here. They mention it. We're trying to let everybody know what is happening. But beyond that, what is really, really happening, and I feel the position of Gustavo Dudamel and I feel the position of Abreu because there is nothing that they can do. There is really nothing that they can do right now to fix the situation. We just have to wait. We just have to be patient. We just have to hope that everything is gonna get better there. We're just fighting for human rights, for democracy, and most important, for freedom. Freedom for my country, freedom for Venezuela.
And so the statements that Abreu and Gustavo have made feel right to you? Absolutely. I feel what he feels, what we want. We cannot take this wonderful miracle that is happening to the youth, to these children. It has been 39 years building this program, and we cannot take it right away. It will be devastating for these 500,000 kids. So I think that what they're doing is the correct thing, but for sure they are in pain. We all Venezuelan are in pain of what is happening there. Any thoughts about the Abreu issue?
Sure. It's really interesting to hear. It's really interesting to hear what you're saying and your perspective. I think another thing that resonated with me from Batsen's speech was also about the role of a conductor and the role of musicians in society, and to what degree are we responsible for commenting on political situations. He mentioned several conductors and several political situations all around the world. He compared it to what was happening in Nazi Germany in the 30s and 40s, and it just made me wonder, what really is the role? And if music itself is meant to be subversive, then why does a conductor need to stand up and speak about it? And what does that really do? Of course, free speech is really important, and speaking out is really important. But I wondered if, for example, Gustavo were to say something against what's happening, what would that really change? So I think as you said, I think what really struck me from Batsen's speech was that he mentioned that El Sistema as an organization has served hundreds of thousands of people for the last 39 years. It's not just the kids who are in it right now. And that in thinking about the longer term goals of El Sistema, it's a program that is creating a whole new culture, really, and a whole new society of people who will hopefully have a different mindset, and those people can really spark change. I don't think it's really just up to one person.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really important because I really do think artists are responsible for kind of helping to create a dialogue about social change. Mm-hmm. But the difference here is Gustavo and Dr. Abreu are not just sitting as artists. They're sitting as ambassadors for 500,000 children. And that is different than, than Pete Seeger, who stood up on his own and spoke out against civil rights. And I think that, it's really important, as with all of our programs, especially for us as a choir, we do talk to the kids a lot about using your voice and standing up for what you believe in your communities. And I think that that still rings true here, but I think that there's another piece at play. I mean, he's representing 500,000 children, not just his own artistic voice, and that's different.
We're almost at the end of today's video podcast, so could we end with a little, I'll give you a setup. Is there a little quick conversation you've had with someone today where you heard something that they're doing that struck you? There's a lot of what goes on is people are passing each other by and they say, oh, we're doing this and we tried this. Is there something you've heard today that some other program is doing that you took a note on or you were impressed by? Anything that you're just noticing in the quick conversations of other colleagues?
Sure. Actually, we had to write, I don't remember what they said, I'm going to say an incendiary question, but it was, we had to come up with these questions that kind of make you feel a little bit uncomfortable and unnervy in your seat. And I love that we had to write them on our name tag, and when we go to the cocktail party, we'll be sharing some of them.
What do you got?
Well, mine is, why are music programs so expensive? So that is a question maybe from the perspective of a person who's kind of tepid about music programs and trying to find the value in a music program. And so that is my little...
Well, we'll be turning to you for an answer by the end of this symposium. Others, anything you heard?
Sure, there were a couple of things. I got to speak with some people from Sistema England this morning, and I'm really struck by how they're using general music teachers, and actually all over Sistema Europe, really, how they're using general music teachers in their programs and leveraging the great music education that's happening across their cities in their after-school programs.
I was very impressed by all these new ideas that they're bringing to the programs to make it more engaged to music. So I was very impressed by that.
And we're almost out of time. So farewell to our friends around the country, around the world. We'll see you tomorrow.